The silence was a heavy blanket, suffocating the once vibrant air of the home I had shared with David. The scent of lavender, his preferred linen spray, still clung faintly to the pillows, a ghostly reminder of the warmth that had once permeated every corner of our lives. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under my weight, an unsettling echo of the missing presence that had become a constant ache in my chest. It wasn't just the physical absence of David, it was the gaping void where our shared laughter, our comfortable silences, our decade-long tapestry of shared experiences used to reside. I was Emma Sterling, or at least I used to be. Now, I was a fractured version of myself, a woman caught in the undertow of her own choices, adrift in a sea of regret and self-loathing. I had committed the ultimate marital sin, infidelity. The woman who had sworn fidelity, had betrayed the vows I made, the man I loved, and the sanctuary we had painstakingly built together. I had always prided myself on my integrity. My friends often called me the moral compass of our group, the one who could always be relied upon to do the right thing. Yet here I was, mired in a moral quagmire of my own making. How did this happen? How did I, the woman who abhorred betrayal, become the betrayer? It wasn't a dramatic fall from grace, a sudden plunge into the abyss. It was a slow, insidious slide, a gradual erosion of the foundations that once held my life steady. It began with a subtle unease, a persistent whisper in the back of my mind that something was amiss. It wasn't that David had changed. If anything, he had become even more consistent, more reliable, more predictable. He was the steady hand in my life, the dependable anchor. And therein, I realized, lay the problem. David and I had met in our late 20s. He was a newly minted architect, his eyes alight with visions of futuristic skyscrapers, and I was a budding art historian, fascinated by the stories hidden within ancient canvases. Our love story wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a slow burn, a gradual merging of two souls who found comfort in each other's company. Our wedding, 10 years ago, was a testament to this deep-seated affection, a celebration of shared values and a mutual desire for a stable, peaceful life. We had settled into a comfortable routine, a harmonious rhythm that defined our existence. The scent of freshly brewed coffee, the sound of David's car starting up each morning, his peck on my forehead before leaving for work, the quiet evenings spent curled up on the couch, engrossed in a book or watching a documentary. These were the comforting rituals of our lives. They were the threads that had woven our existence together, the seemingly immutable pattern that defined us as a couple. But lately, that pattern felt like a cage. I had begun to feel stifled, a suffocating sense of predictability that had seeped into every facet of my life. It wasn't that I didn't love David. I did, with a quiet, steadfast affection. But it wasn't the electrifying passion that had once sparked between us. Our love had settled into a comfortable, almost domestic rhythm, a warm ember glowing faintly instead of the raging fire it once was. The thrill was gone, replaced by a sense of placid contentment, and while contentment should have been enough, my heart was beginning to crave more. I started feeling a nameless yearning, a longing for something I couldn't quite articulate. It was like a faint melody playing in the background of my consciousness, a constant reminder of what I felt was missing. I felt restless, unfulfilled, as if a vital part of me was dormant, waiting to be awakened. This gnawing feeling, this quiet desperation, became the fertile ground for the seeds of betrayal. And then, Alex walked back into my life. Alex, my first love, the one who had always occupied a special corner of my heart. We were young, reckless college students when we fell in love, our hearts beating in unison to the rhythm of youthful dreams and audacious ambition. He was an artist then, a free spirit with a penchant for poetry and a rebellious streak that both fascinated and terrified me. We spent hours lost in passionate debates, dreaming about a future we were convinced we would build together. But life, as it often does, had other plans. His career took him overseas, to far-flung corners of the globe, and I, with a heavy heart, moved on, convincing myself that our time together was just a beautiful but fleeting chapter in the grand narrative of my life. We lost contact over the years, our paths diverging, our lives evolving in separate directions. Or so I thought. When his name popped up on my phone one evening, a forgotten melody played in my heart. It was just a simple message, a casual inquiry. "Emma, I'm in town. Would love to catch up." The suddenness of it jolted me, throwing me back to a time when my heart had been free, unencumbered by responsibilities and domestic bliss. My initial reaction was trepidation. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen, a battle raging within me. It was just Alex, an old friend, a harmless coffee date, I told myself. But a part of me, the part one had tried so hard to suppress, yearned for the rekindling of that old flame. I wanted to see him, to hear his voice, to feel the familiar spark that had once set my world ablaze. I responded with a carefully worded message, a casual acknowledgement that belied the turmoil brewing inside me. "Sure, Alex, it would be great to catch up," I typed, feeling like I was walking on a dangerous tightrope, teetering between reason and reckless desire. The moment I saw him again, the years seemed to melt away. He hadn't changed much, the same mischievous glint in his eyes, the same disarming smile that could still make my heart flutter. The years of separation had only seemed to enhance his charm, adding a layer of sophistication and mystery to the boy I had once known. We talked for hours, reminiscing about our college days, laughing at old memories, and before I knew it, that innocuous coffee date had morphed into dinner, then into long nights of texting, then into stolen moments of passion that I could no longer resist. It was like stepping into a time warp, a brief respite from the mundane reality of my life. With Alex, I felt alive again, rejuvenated, as if I had stumbled upon a forgotten part of myself. He listened intently as I spoke about my work, my dreams, my longings, and in his eyes I felt seen, truly seen, for the woman I was and the woman I longed to be. He made me feel desirable, cherished, and valued in a way I hadn't in years. He reminded me of the young, passionate woman I had been before the monotony of routine had dulled my spirit. I convinced myself that it wasn't about betraying David. It was about rediscovering myself, about reigniting the flame that had been flickering within me. I told myself that it was harmless, just a temporary escape, a harmless dalliance that would eventually fade away. But deep down, I knew that I was playing a dangerous game, one that could have devastating consequences. The thrill of the forbidden was intoxicating. The stolen glances, the clandestine meetings, the whispered conversations, they added a sense of excitement and danger that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I was living a double life, balancing precariously between the devoted wife and the clandestine lover. In one life, I was Emma Sterling, the loyal and dutiful wife, cooking dinner, watching movies, and holding David's hand in bed. I went through the motions, the rituals that had defined our marriage, all the while feeling like an imposter, a pretender in my own life. In the other life, I was the woman who was awakened by Alex's touch, his voice, his very presence. I was a woman consumed by passion, driven by desire, and reckless in my pursuit of something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I was living on the edge, and I was fully aware of the potential consequences, yet I couldn't bring myself to stop. But guilt is a relentless tormentor, a slow poison that seeps into every facet of your life, corrupting everything it touches. It began as a faint prickle, a slight discomfort, but it quickly grew into a constant, agonizing ache in my conscience. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home, disconnected from the man who had been my rock for so many years. The weight of my lies became unbearable. Every conversation with David felt like a charade, every touch a betrayal. I would find myself staring at his face, memorizing his features, trying to reconcile the man I loved with the man I was betraying. I would lie awake at night, the silence amplifying the sound of my own guilty conscience, my mind racing with a multitude of questions. How long could I keep up this charade? When would the house of cards I had built come crashing down? How would David react when he finally learned the truth? The fear of discovery became a constant companion, a shadow that followed me everywhere. I started scrutinizing my every move, my every word, terrified that I would slip up and expose my duplicity. I was living in a state of perpetual anxiety, my nerves frayed, my mind constantly on edge. The joy I had initially found in Alex's company was slowly being replaced by the heavy weight of guilt and fear. I became adept at compartmentalization, a master of deception, effortlessly shifting between the roles of loyal wife and clandestine lover. I could sit across from David at dinner, making polite conversation, while simultaneously feeling the weight of my betrayal pressing down on me. I could laugh at his jokes, feign interest in his stories, while all the while my mind was consumed with thoughts of Alex and the stolen moments we shared. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the truth. I was lying to the man I loved, the man who trusted me implicitly, and that realization became a constant source of anguish. It was like living with a constant, low-grade fever, a persistent reminder of the moral bankruptcy of my actions. And then, one evening, it all came crashing down. I was getting ready to leave for another clandestine meeting with Alex, telling David that I had a work meeting, a lie that had become all too familiar to my tongue. As I stood by the door, adjusting my scarf, David stepped into my path, his arms crossed, his face an inscrutable mask. "Where are you going, Emma?" His voice was calm, too calm, a steady tone that belied the storm that was raging beneath the surface. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Just meeting a client for a quick drink," I lied, the words slipping out of my mouth with practiced ease. He nodded, his gaze unwavering. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket and handed me his phone. My blood ran cold as I looked at the screen. It was a photo, a picture of Alex and me sitting too close at a cafe, his hand brushing against mine. The timestamp indicated that the photo was from last week. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the irrefutable evidence of my betrayal. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. The charade was over. The truth was out in the open. I felt like I had been struck by lightning, the impact rendering me speechless. I opened my mouth to speak, to offer some kind of explanation, some kind of justification, but no words came out. There was no excuse that could erase the hurt in his eyes, no justification that could undo the betrayal I had committed. He had been my confidant, my soulmate, the bedrock of my existence, and I had shattered everything he believed in. "I didn't want to believe it," David said, his voice quiet, almost defeated, but I had to know. I had to see it with my own eyes. The pain in his voice was like a knife twisting in my gut. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized the extent of the damage I had inflicted. I had broken the heart of the man who had loved me unconditionally. I had shattered the trust that had bound us together for so many years. And the weight of that realization was almost unbearable. "Is it over?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, a plea for clarity in a storm of chaos. Tears burned my eyes. I don't know," I confessed, the words catching in my throat. And that was the agonizing truth. I was torn between two worlds, trapped between the allure of the past and the security of the present. I didn't know if I was ready to let go of Alex, but I also knew that I couldn't bear the thought of losing David. I was adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions, lost in the labyrinth of my own making. David took a deep breath, stepping back as if the physical distance could mitigate the pain. "Then you need to figure it out, Emma. But not while you're still my wife." His words were like a death sentence to the life I had known, a painful severing of the threads that had bound us together. And just like that, the life I had carefully constructed, the life I had taken for granted, started slipping through my fingers. I stood there, frozen, paralyzed by the magnitude of my actions, watching as David walked away, his steps heavy with the weight of betrayal and disillusionment. And for the first time in months, I truly understood the gravity of my choices. I spent the next few days in a daze, moving through the motions of life like a ghost in my own home. David moved out, taking his belongings, his presence, his laughter, and leaving behind a hollow void that echoed with the memories of what we had been. At first, I thought I would run into Alex's arms, seeking solace and comfort in the passion we had shared. But something held me back. The thrill was gone, replaced by a heavy feeling of emptiness. I sat in our now empty house, surrounded by the remnants of a life I had destroyed. The scent of David's cologne still lingered in the closet. His favorite coffee mug sat unused in the sink. His books remained untouched on the shelf. Each object, each space, served as a painful reminder of what I had lost. Memories flooded me. Our wedding day, the nights we had spent talking about our dreams, the silly nicknames he had for me, the gentle way he would trace the lines on my palm. I had taken it all for granted, blinded by my restless heart and my misguided pursuit of fleeting passion. I met Alex again, but the thrill had faded. The excitement that had once driven me was now replaced by a dull ache of regret. I realized that my yearning for passion had blinded me to the deeper love that David and I had shared. I had traded the stability of a steadfast heart for the fleeting excitement of a forbidden affair, and in doing so, I had jeopardized everything. One evening, as I sat alone in the quiet of our once happy home, the silence was deafening. I picked up my phone, my hand shaking, and dialed David's number. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and anticipation swirling within me. He answered after a few rings, his voice tired but composed. "Emma?" Tears welled up in my eyes. "I'm so sorry, David," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. A long, agonizing silence stretched between us, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, he spoke, his voice devoid of anger, replaced by a deep-seated weariness. "I know," he said, "but I don't know if sorry is enough." My heart sank. I knew he was right. Sorry wasn't enough. It would never be enough to undo the damage I had caused, to mend the heart I had shattered. But it was a start. It was a step on the long, arduous road to redemption. I swallowed the lump in my throat, fighting back the sobs that threatened to overwhelm me. "Can we talk?" "Please," I pleaded, my voice filled with desperation. Another pause, another agonizing moment of silence. Then, finally, a single, tentative word, "I'll think about it." And with that, the call ended. I sat in the dim light of our living room, the silence pressing down on me like a physical weight. I realized that love wasn't always about passion or excitement, about the fleeting thrill of the forbidden. Sometimes, love was about choosing the person who had chosen you every single day. It was about the quiet comfort of a shared history, the unwavering support of a steadfast partner, the unspoken bond that had been carefully cultivated over years of shared experiences. I had thrown that away, blinded by my own selfish desires. I didn't know if David would ever forgive me, if he would ever be able to trust me again. I didn't even know if I deserved his forgiveness. But for the first time, I knew what I had to do. I had to face the consequences of my actions, confront the devastation I had caused, and somehow, some way, find a path back to the love I had betrayed. The road ahead would be long and arduous, paved with guilt, regret, and uncertainty. But I knew that if I was ever going to find peace, if I was ever going to heal the wounds I had inflicted, I had to start by acknowledging the truth of my actions and accepting responsibility for the choices I had made. I was ready to embark on that journey, even if it meant facing the darkest corners of my own soul. This was the beginning of my path back to myself, and perhaps, if I was lucky, back to the man I had so carelessly hurt. It was the beginning of the long, difficult process of rebuilding, not just our marriage, but my own fractured self.